Hey everyone, Jess here. Welcome back to another video. Today I am going to go through my top 6 favourite books in the whole wide world. Why 6, you ask? Why not do 3 or 5 or 10? Like a normal number. I did have 5, but then I realised I forgot to put my favourite picture book in. So that's why there's 6. I actually found it quite hard to come up with this list, not because I had so many, but because I found it hard to come up with 5 or 6 books that was so deserving of being on this list. The way I come up with top favourite things like this is I think of, well, if I was stuck on a desert island, or if I could only own books, movies, whatever, what would they be? Like, if I could only own 6 books for the rest of my life, what would I want those books to be? Don't know if that's the right question, considering I'm not the kind of person that just loves like buying books all the time. Like, I would rather have a small curated collection of books than like a massive like sprawling book collection. Kind of weird that way. In the end, I narrowed it. Anyway, came up with my top 6 favourite books in the whole wide world. So I'm going to go through them and then we'll do some honourable mentions at the end. So we'll get cracking. Like pot crackling. That was random. Anyway. Coming in at number 6 on this list is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. I absolutely love this book. It actually used to be my least favourite Lord of the Rings, but this is the Lord of the Rings book I've read the most, and I realised it is my favourite. I love it because it's just a lot of walking and talking. I just love the world building and the description and just all the different things that happen. Like, I don't find it boring. Like, yes, all they do is walk and talk and it takes them ages to get out of the Shire, but I just love how it's a nice rambling book where stuff still happens, but it's just such a great setup for the rest of the series. I love travel, and one of my absolute dreams is to do like a walking tour in England and Scotland and just like walk through moors and see abandoned castles and all that kind of stuff. So I think I also love this because of that. And Lord of the Rings is just a stunning fantasy series, you know? Anyway, Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. That's coming in at number 6. Alright. Coming in at number 5 is this little gem, The Other Side of Beautiful by Kim Locke. Now, I got this as an ARC from work, an advanced reads copy from work, last year, and I like absolutely loved reading it so much. It follows the main character. Her name's Mercy. She's in like her 30s, I want to say, maybe. Anyway, kind of around 20s, 30s. Kind of that age. Anyway, basically she's separated from her husband, and then her house burns down, and a couple of other things are happening in her life that you figure it out at the end. And in a panic attack, she spontaneously decides to buy a caravan, buy a van and drive from Adelaide up to Darwin. Now, if you don't know anything about the trip from Adelaide to Darwin, it's basically you just go straight up through desert for like 5 days. So basically this story follows her journey on that and all the different people she meets and all the things she's running from, metaphorically and literally. And it's just a beautiful, funny, not light-hearted but very warm book about kind of finding emotional freedom and coping through stress and finding love and just kind of like letting go. Yeah, it's a beautiful little read, so easy to read. I read it in like 2 days. Again, the travel thing I absolutely love, but yes, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous book. There you go, number 5. Okay, coming in, what are we up to? Number 4, my 4th favourite book in the whole entire world so far is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling. I always feel weird about putting Harry Potter on favourites lists because it's like, well, I feel like it's kind of cliche, but Harry Potter is honestly one of my favourite series in the whole entire world. Not my favourite, but one of them. And I love the Deathly Hallows so much because it just like wraps up everything. You find out all the answers you wanted to know. It's very different to the other ones. Obviously, they're not at Hogwarts for most of it, and just different things happen. And I remember reading it and being like, this is such a breath of fresh air from the other ones. Because, you know, 1 through 6 is basically like, starts at summer holidays, Harry's locked up by the Dursleys, he has his birthday, he may go hang out with the Weasleys and everyone. Stuff may happen before school, but then they go to school and then he fights Voldemort in the end. Like, it is very, very repetitive. And I remember getting to the Deathly Hallows being like, this is so incredible, they're doing other stuff outside of Hogwarts. And I reread this recently and just like, the writing style is just so comfortable and conversational, and I love Harry, Ron and Hermione. Just like the characters are brilliant and just like so good. Yeah, definitely my favorite Harry Potter. 4th favorite book in the whole world. I would love to be able to write like this and world build like this, and just I can not stress about how much I love Harry Potter. Anyway, I will stop ranting about that now and put that aside. And coming in, I'm trying to keep track of this, 654, coming in at number 3, my third favourite book is a little junior fiction book actually called starring Sally J. Friedman as herself by Judy Blume. This is a upper primary book that I discovered when I was about 10, 11, 12, kind of around, I think when I was in year 5. Basically, Sally J. Friedman is our main character. She's around 11, and basically her brother falls sick. They live in New Jersey immediately after the end of World War II. Her brother falls sick, and she and her brother and her mum and her grandmother have to move to Florida because, you know, it's warm and warm air is great when you've been sick. She is a Jew and her imagination runs wild, and she's convinced that Hitler is living in Miami Beach in her apartment block. She also constantly makes up stories and has all these wild fantasies about being a famous ballerina and a famous actress and all that kind of stuff. It sounds dark, but it's actually so beautiful, and it follows the year that she lives in Miami Beach and her, you know, having her first crush and making friends and navigating friendship drama when it blows up. And it's just like such, as I'm saying this about all the books on the list, how they're so beautiful, but this is just so just lighthearted. I'm also saying this about a lot of books, but it's such a fun, easy read. It has all the things I love about summer in it. And yeah, I always find out new things every time I read it. Because when I was younger, when I read it, a lot of the historical stuff just went over my head. But now I understand it. And yeah, it's just very fun. Judy Blume is a very, very fun author. And yeah, it's just a great book. I read it every year over summer. That's great. All right, number 2, we're almost done. Number 2 on this list is another unknown gem that I actually got secondhand from my sister when she didn't want to read it anymore, is A Snicker of Magic by Natalie Lloyd. This is Natalie Lloyd's debut novel. It was published in 2014. It is kind of magical realism, again junior fiction. Basically our protagonist here is Felicity. Hang on, Felicity Pickle. She and her mum and her sister kind of are constantly traveling around the country, but in this book her mum decides to settle them in a place called Midnight Gulch, which is where their auntie lives. And basically it's this magical town. Well, it's a town that used to have magic, but it was lost. There's a folk story attached to it. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's basically about Felicity getting the magic back into the town. And the way Lloyd describes this magic is, you know when people talk about like words being magic or like kindness being magic, kind of along those lines, but it's also like real magic. It's really hard to explain, but basically, again, this one's about making friends, but doing random acts of kindness with people, kind of like the town coming together to bring magic back. Anyway, it's just a beautiful story about friendship and family and finding your place and finding home and caring for one another. And yeah, it's just a great book. Coming in at number 1, funnily enough, I don't actually own a copy of my favourite book, but it is Highway by Nadia Wheatley. And I discovered this randomly one day at the school library and absolutely fell in love with it, and I really need to buy my own copy because I love it. And it is a picture book, but basically it follows a family whose dad is a truck driver, and so it takes place over a 24-hour cycle of the mum and 2 kids going with their father in his truck as he drives somewhere to pick up a truckload of tires and then delivers them back home. And as they're on the road, they do holiday things, so it's like a holiday. They find a swimming hole and go swimming, they have a picnic, they go to a motel to get like dinner and get into their pajamas and brush their teeth, they're sleeping in the truck cab, they're having breakfast in it. It's just kind of like a fun road trip book, basically. Again, really resonating with my love of travel and road trips and just doing fun things like that. But it's an absolutely lovely book. I love it, hence why it's my favourite book in the whole wide world. And I should really get myself a copy. So there you have it. That was my list of my top 6 favourite books in the whole wide world. My list of 6 books that I would own for the rest of my life if I could not own anything else. But now I'm going to go through a few select honourable mentions. Here are some honourable mentions in no particular order. So first up is The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. Again, I don't actually own a copy of this. If for some reason you don't know anything about the Chronicles of Narnia, basically The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is the 2nd out of 7, but it was written first. It's set in World War II. 4 siblings. They are sent to the countryside during the air raids in London to live with an old professor. Their youngest child, Lucy, she discovers a magical wardrobe that transports them into the magical world of Narnia, where it is always winter and never Christmas, and the Great Lion Aslan has been banished, and it's ruled by the evil White Witch. And basically it's about what happens in their time there. I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah, anyway, it's a beautiful book. Again, the fantasy, C.S. Lewis's fantasy is like absolutely top notch. The allegory in Narnia is also top notch and just beautiful. He has such a great narrative voice, similar to Tolkien in that it's very conversational and it's the narrator talking directly to the reader. But yes, Narnia is written for children younger than the audience in Lord of the Rings. But yeah, it's just a lovely, sweet book. So that almost made the list, but not quite. Second, again, in no particular order, is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Now, I think my love of this is very much influenced by the film. I'm currently in the middle of watching the BBC show, so I haven't seen the end of it, but I love this movie so much. And I just love the comedy in this. Like, Mrs. Bennet is such a loose, flappy unit. Maybe loose unit is the wrong term, but she's just like all over the place. And her husband, his like dry sense of humor is just hilarious. And I'm like, how is their marriage this functional? Like, I don't understand. Anyway, and just Darcy is just, I find him hilarious. I find Bingley hilarious. Just all the characters in this book, how they feel about love and how they try and get the people that they want is just like, just an absolute comedy, I reckon. I know Jane Austen, like the film's a period drama. I secretly think it's a rom-com, and even though most of the time when I read this book, I have no clue what they're saying, I still get the tone from it and I still think it's hilarious. Anyway, and it's just a great, good old love story. Alright, thirdly, Prufrock and Other Observations by T.S. Eliot. Now, this collection I have is a whole bunch of his poems. So it also has Ash Wednesday and The Wasteland and The Hollow Man and poems. But the book in here that I absolutely love is Prufrock and Other Observations. So this is his first collection of poems, and it has The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, Preludes, Rhapsody on a Windy Night, and something else. Portrait of a Lady. I studied some of these in Year 12 for the HSC and like fell in love with his poetry. Basically, if you're not aware, T.S. Eliot lived in the early 20th century, so Prufrock and Other Observations was written around between 1910 and 1920 approximately, and T.S. Eliot deals with a lot of themes surrounding the city and modernist life, and the way he depicted the city in these poems, like I absolutely fell in love with. His poetry is just, he articulates himself so well and his imagery is so on point, but it's not kind of like airy fairy poetry, you know, like the romantics. It's very gritty and he deals with a lot of dark themes. Very abstract a lot of the time you're reading it and it's like, I have no clue what this means, but that's what I love about it. And you can really dig into what he's trying to say and pull it apart. Anyway, so yes, the selected poems of T.S. Eliot, Prufrock and Other Observations. The very last honourable mention that didn't quite make the list, but I still love it so much, is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. You're getting a theme here. I love modernist literature. Mrs. Dalloway, when was it written? I don't know. It was published in 1925, so around Prufrock and Other Observations. Again, focusing on the modernist theme of the city and isolation and just modernist themes. I clearly still remember what I learned in the HSC. So basically it follows Clarissa Dalloway, who is preparing for a party that she's hosting that evening. The whole book is basically her day. So it goes from morning to the party at night, all her preparations and the different characters she comes into contact with. Again, I love its depiction of the city, the stream of consciousness style. I am loving stream of consciousness. In terms of reading it, how it just kind of like dumps you in the character's head, but I also love writing it. Yeah, I just love the genius of this book and how it digs into so much during kind of like a period of like 6 to 8 hours. It depicts post-traumatic stress and suicide really, really well, and it's just a really great, well-written book. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to comment below with any book recommendations or books on those lists that you also enjoy. And yes, I will see you next time.